Video games are a unique form of immersive storytelling. These days, most developers strive to produce titles that provide a solid story and present players with exciting new worlds to explore. Today, we are taking a look at games that have attempted to do that, but managed to lose us along the way. Some of these games are steeped in metaphor, some of these titles venture into experimental subversions of genre, and others are just flat out baffling in terms of their plots. This is our picks for the top 10 video games no one understands. And of course there's a few spoilers on this list, but a lot of these are old games. Let's get to it. Starting us off in at number 10, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Okay, let's begin our list with a franchise that is notorious for becoming exceedingly more confusing as it progressed. But really, if we're being honest, in the Metal Gear Solid series, it's Sons of Liberty that really manages to put your brain in a scramble at points. Now, on the surface level, it seems like a very simple, straightforward title, but that is a deception, my friends, a well-crafted ruse. The plot of the game becomes more and more confusing as you continue playing. There's a worldwide conspiracy that involves a secret organization which controls every aspect of society. Your boss turns out to be an AI, and there is a ton of meta stuff that gets thrown into the mix as well. The game is very much a product of Hideo Kojima being a developer who uses the medium to address a point. It is a commentary on the video game industry's obsession with franchises and sequels, and the fallacy of player expectations that comes with that. Kojima even stated in a 2015 interview that his artistic vision for the series was, I quote, "to make a story that seems very simple on the surface, and once you zoom in, there's a lot of details. When you do that, sometimes the veins of stories get lost, change, or get stuck. From there, I need to create new bloodlines so the story can keep going. Sometimes I need to accept these inconsistencies in order to be able to achieve what I want for the story." So I guess that kind of makes sense as to why the games are the way they are. More on Kojima later though. In at number 9, Killer 7. Killer 7 is one of the lesser known titles compared to others on our list. From the brain of developer Goichi Suda, Killer 7 puts the player in the shoes of 7 different assassins who are all trying to take out a godlike entity. But there's more. There's a lot of US-Japan relation undertones, a subplot about brainwashing, and battles between heaven and hell in the mix. Now that may sound intriguing, but the way it is executed is anything but. The game fails to introduce players to this world, instead just tossing them in and lacking some serious context that would clarify a lot of what players experienced while they were playing. New characters just kinda pop up without an introduction. And when we do get some exposition, it is in the form of painfully long cutscenes. Moving on to number 8, Sonic 06. Now you might be wondering, why is a Sonic game on this list? Sonic is one of the most straightforward franchises, right? Well, you're wrong, because Sega has been working very hard to take the concept of an adorable blue speedster who runs real fast and was beloved in the days of Sega Genesis and make him despicably edgy. Wait, it's kind of one and the same with Sega, isn't it? Okay, all shade aside, there are many convoluted plot points in modern Sonic games, and the execution is often a crap show thanks to how baffling of a company Sega has evolved into. They half-ass a lot, people. We've done videos on it. Go check them out. Sonic 06 was a game that got panned not only for its abhorrent writing, but the fact that the game's controls, mechanics, and camera were downright garbage as well. How does a game like that with a surefire, profitable protagonist end up that bad? I mean, I could break down all the reasons why Sega is awful, but we would be here all day. Also, like I said, we've done other videos on it. So go check them out after this list. Moving on. In at number 7, Kingdom Hearts. Here we have yet another franchise on our list. Now, despite being a well-crafted series of games, we think it is safe to say that you can play through Kingdom Hearts and still not know what the f is going on in it. For a game that takes some of the most iconic franchises and smashes them together, especially with one of those franchises being like all of Disney's properties, one would think that the games would try to be a bit more cohesive. There's spin-offs, alternate universes, time travel, and a whole lot of backstory that digs into a bunch of Square Enix lore. All this and more makes it really difficult for the games to be accessible to new players. There's just so much going on that it's hard to even follow where you're going from point A to point B. Or point Z, really. And at number 6, BioShock Infinite. Now don't get me wrong, BioShock Infinite is really fun. It is a well-made title, and it's one of those games that even though the graphics are a little dated now, it's still fun to go back and give it a whirl. The world within it is a fascinating one, and over the course of its narrative, the game slowly introduces dimensional shifts, which do make sense at first. But then, by its end, it takes a more intense turn, getting real deep into the whole alternate dimension stuff, to the point where it is very hard to follow. Spoiler time, the reveal that the villain of the game is actually a future version of the player character does make sense. But then there's a part at the very end with Elizabeth, your companion who is also the villain's daughter, aka your daughter, spoilers, shows up and then tries to kill you and break the cycle. Except there is a ton of her in different outfits who all just kind of gather around you like a horde and then murder you. It's intense. And also, that whole last 10-15 minutes makes zero sense. I played it and I was like, I kinda get it, and then I had to Google it and I was like, okay, this does make more sense now, I am following, but it was kind of a convoluted journey getting there. The other 90% of the game, super dope though. And there's also connections to the first game as well, which personally I totally missed since I played Infinite before the first BioShock, so heads up on that one, friends. Moving on to number 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. When you buy a Call of Duty game, you have certain expectations. Generally, you pick it up for the multiplayer modes. You're not getting it for story, although every now and then it does manage to impress with one of its title's campaign modes. Now enter Black Ops 3. Long story short, the main character has been dead the whole time, with the game implying that you, the player character, is actually an AI character, which is then kind of revealed in the text that appears right before each mission. One of the game's co-directors, Jason Blundell, even stated that they wanted to make an impression with the game's story, so they put in a whole lot of, I quote, mindfuckery. It also says a lot that when Black Ops 4 came out, the story mode was canned altogether. So yeah. Moving on to number 4, Bloodborne. Many people equate Bloodborne to its sibling series, Dark Souls, same devs, largely because of the difficulty and how it edges on players to want to dive into the minute details the game offers up. Set in a decrepit Gothic Victorian era inspired city, the game is filled with those who have been afflicted with a The game is filled with those who have been afflicted with a blood-borne disease. Your goal is to unearth the city's mysteries and find the source of the plague. Simple enough, right? As the game progresses, it takes some major notes from Lovecraftian horror, with the old blood that society is addicted to turning out to be derived from eldritch monsters who were worshipped by a secret church. Following? There's also a whole thing where you turn into a baby of sorts and then must eat 3 umbilical cords, and yeah, that's for another list. Long story short, there is a lot going on there. And at number 3, Beyond Two Souls. David Cage. David Cage from Quantic Dream has an uncanny ability of spearheading narrative games that aren't just immersive, unique stories. They're stories that lay on the emotion thick and can borderline cringe at times. Remember Jason and Heavy Rain, anyone? Press X for Jason. This title though, starring Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe, has Page playing a character who has a separate soul linked to her and supernatural powers that derive from that psychic link. She ends up being drafted by the government to help stop an attack from a device that connects the living and the dead. Where it really gets confusing though is when you realize that the story is being told out of chronological order, and this storytelling technique actually ends up making the game more convoluted than it needed to be. It's sort of just a device that doesn't really serve the story or the experience of hearing or playing that story. Many people felt that way, and when the game was re-released, there was an option to play it in chronological order, which kinda helped, but a lot of it was still kind of David Cagey. Moving on to number 2, What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch is a beautiful story about a woman named Edith coming to terms with whether her family is cursed and if their fate is one that she is destined to share. It's intense, but it is told in the form of metaphor-doused vignettes. Taking place within her childhood home, the game transforms into locations that serve as a trip down memory lane. Not a good one, depicting the deaths of all of Edith's passed on family members, all of which take place from their perspectives. Each one has truth in it, but is coded in metaphor and fantasy and surreal embellishment. Really, it's the reason why the game is so fantastic, but for many the allegories are lost on them, or some have read different moments in the game through a different subjective lens. The entire game is about storytelling, and it has been praised as one of the best games this decade because of it. So definitely worth baffling your brain for a little bit. It'll give you a lot to think about. And last but not least, no spoilers I promise, Death Stranding. Leading up to its release, world-renowned developer and Mads Mikkelsen's #1 fanboy, Hideo Kojima, kept calling Death Stranding a new kind of game genre. A strand game is what he called it. And ever since the first trailer for the game dropped, audiences have been utterly perplexed with what the hell the game was about. Guillermo del Toro is in it. Conan O'Brien makes a cameo. There's some stuff going on with life and death and invisible monsters and whales and a portable fetus, and it was a lot to take in. And much of the game's narrative was kept hush-hush until the reviews of the game popped up online just prior to its release. But one thing was for certain, it looked really good, and if his track record proves anything, Kojima is very good at telling stories in unique ways. Now that the game has been released, answers to questions like, what the hell are those enemies? How did they get there? And what on earth is the purpose of that baby? Are now becoming much more clear. But we're not going to answer any of them, spoiler free zone over here. But what we will say is that it is a very unique world that Kojima has created, and one that is extremely surreal and very Kojima. So yeah, there's a lot of complexities. Alright, there we have it, friends. What other games do you find it difficult to understand? Give us a shout in those comments below. If you dug this video, spread that love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Gaming for more lists just like this. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.